is just the beginning. Don't steal another man's woman.
My wife once said, "Don't come to my office party. It'll be awkward with my ex there." I said, "Of course I'll stay home." What she didn't know was that I was the new regional director her boss invited as a surprise guest. The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire had spent 3 years climbing the corporate ladder at Morrison & Associates while I busted my A in construction management. She'd grown distant, working late, having client dinners that lasted until midnight. I'd found the receipts 2 weeks ago, hotel bars, expensive restaurants, charges on a credit card I didn't know existed. The selfie on her phone was the final nail. Claire and Chad, her college ex, clinking champagne glasses at the Meridian Hotel. The same Chad she'd sworn meant nothing to her anymore. So when her boss, Mr. Gleason, called, offering me the regional director position overseeing Claire's department, I didn't hesitate. "We need someone who understands real work," he'd said. "Someone who won't get caught up in office politics." If only he knew. The Morrison & Associates Christmas party was in full swing when I walked through those glass doors. The firm's 32nd floor conference room had been transformed into something from a magazine. Twinkling lights, ice sculptures, and enough champagne to float a yacht. Claire stood near the windows in her black cocktail dress, the one I'd bought her for our anniversary. She was laughing at something Chad was whispering in her ear, her hand resting on his arm, like they were still 22 and in love. "You must be the new regional director," said a voice beside me. I turned to see a petite blonde with sharp green eyes and a knowing smile. "Sophie Martinez. I'm an associate here." "That's me," I said, accepting the champagne flute she offered. "And you are?" "Chad's girlfriend," she said, her smile turning carnivory. Or was, until about 5 minutes ago when I saw those photos on his phone. I nearly choked on my champagne. Photos? Hotel receipts, text messages, the works. Sophie's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white around her glass. "Apparently he's been very busy with married women in the firm." Before I could respond, Mr. Gleason's voice boomed across the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet our new regional director, overseeing our corporate litigation department." The room fell silent. Claire's face went white as she spotted me across the crowded space. Chad's mouth fell open, champagne dribbling down his chin onto his $1,000 suit. "Some of you may know him already," Gleason continued with a grin that suggested he knew exactly what he was doing. "Please welcome Clara's husband." The silence stretched like a taut wire. Then Sophie stepped forward, her voice carrying across the room with crystalline clarity. "Chad, darling," she called out sweetly, "before everyone congratulates our new director, maybe you'd like to explain these photos I found on your phone?" She held up his iPhone, swiping through what appeared to be a collection of intimate messages and hotel selfies. The crowd pressed closer, hungry for drama. Chad lunged forward, trying to grab the phone. "Sophie, don't what?" she snapped, her composure finally cracking. "Don't show everyone how you've been screwing half the married women in this firm?" She hurled her champagne flute at him. Chad ducked, but the crystal shattered against the ice sculpture behind him, sending chunks of ice cascading across the catered spread. The 3-tier cake, an expensive monstrosity decorated with the firm's logo, toppled sideways as people scattered. Claire tried to approach me, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. "Honey, I can explain. Can you?" I set down my untouched champagne and smiled, because I've been trying to explain those hotel receipts for weeks. The crowd was eating this up. Phones appeared, recording the chaos. Chad was on his hands and knees, trying to gather the scattered cake and salvage what remained of his dignity. "You know what the funny thing is?" I continued, my voice carrying easily in the acoustics of the glass-walled room. "I actually came here tonight to support my wife's career, but it looks like she's been getting plenty of support already." Sophie appeared at my elbow, having composed herself with remarkable speed. "I think we should go," she said quietly. "Let them clean up their own mess." As we walked toward the elevators, I heard Gleason's voice behind us. "Well, this has been educational. Clara, Chad, my office first thing Monday morning." The elevator doors closed on the chaos, and I found myself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. That was beautiful, Sophie said, grinning. Did you plan all this? The timing was pure luck, I admitted, but I've been planning the rest for weeks. Her eyebrows rose. The rest? Oh, we're just getting started. The only thing colder than Clara's stare the next morning was the empty spot in our bed where she used to sleep. She'd spent the night in the guest room, and I'd heard her on the phone until 3 a.m., probably doing damage control with her girlfriends from the firm. My phone had been buzzing since 6, with texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Coworkers wanting the inside scoop, friends of friends who'd seen the videos that were apparently circulating on social media. The hashtag #HadACakeGate was trending locally. Clara emerged from the guest room looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her usually perfect blonde hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared. She'd aged 5 years overnight. "We need to talk," she said, pouring coffee with shaking hands. "Do we?" I was already dressed for work, my first official day as her boss. "I think last night covered most of it." "You humiliated me in front of my entire firm." "I humiliated you?" I laughed, the sound harsh in our granite and stainless steel kitchen. "Clara, you've been screwing your ex-boyfriend for months. You humiliated yourself." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. Hotel receipts don't lie. Neither do selfies or credit card statements or the fact that you've been coming home at midnight smelling like his cologne." The coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the tile floor. Brown liquid spread between us like a stain. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough to plan my next move." At Morrison and Associates, the atmosphere was electric. Whispered conversations stopped when I walked by. Elevators fell silent when I stepped inside. By the time I reached my new corner office, 3 floors above Clara's cubicle, the entire building was buzzing with speculation. My assistant, Mrs. Henderson, was a 60-something woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd worked for the firm for 20 years and knew where every body was buried. "Your 10 o'clock is here," she announced, barely hiding her amusement. Sophie Martinez walked in looking polished and professional, her blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun. She'd traded last night's party dress for a sharp business suit that screamed competence. "I brought coffee," she said, setting down 2 cups from the expensive place downstairs. "And information." "I'm listening." She pulled out a tablet and swiped through what appeared to be a comprehensive dossier. "Chad Morrison. Yes, he's related to the founding partner, which explains a lot. He's been with the firm for 5 years, promoted twice despite mediocre performance reviews. Currently dating 3 different women in the building, including your wife. 3? Jennifer in accounting, Lisa from the paralegal pool, and Clara. He's been juggling them for months, using company resources to book hotels and restaurants. The man's an idiot, but he's a connected idiot. I studied the documents she'd compiled. Financial records, email timestamps, even security footage from the hotel lobby. "How did you get all this?" "I'm good at my job," she said simply, "and I don't like being played for a fool." "What do you want?" "Chad's promotion. He's up for senior associate, and frankly, I'm better qualified. But more than that, I want him to understand what it feels like to lose everything because of his own stupidity." I leaned back in my leather chair, studying this remarkable woman who'd turned corporate espionage into an art form. "What did you have in mind?" Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Leave that to me. But first, we need to establish some new policies in your department." By lunch, the entire 32nd floor was in chaos. I'd implemented a new wellness initiative that required all department employees to participate in mandatory physical fitness sessions. The instructor was Frank Kowalski, my best friend from the boxing gym, a former Golden Gloves champion who looked like he could bench press a Buick. Chad, soft from years of expense account lunches, was struggling through his 3rd set of push-ups when I walked into the conference room we'd converted into a makeshift gym. "How's everyone doing?" I asked cheerfully. Frank grinned, his massive arms crossed over his chest. "Chad here was just telling me about his cardiovascular health. Apparently he gets plenty of exercise outside the office." The other employees snickered. Chad's face was red from more than just exertion. I don't think this is appropriate workplace activity, he gasped, struggling to his feet. Really? I consulted the tablet Sophie had prepared. According to company policy section 4.7, employee wellness initiatives are not only appropriate, but encouraged. Of course, if you'd prefer to discuss your recent performance reviews instead. Chad's face went pale. He knew I had access to his personnel file now, including the complaints from clients about his sloppy work and the warnings about his expense account irregularities. No, he said quietly. The wellness program is fine. Excellent. Frank, why don't you show everyone the proper form for burpees? I left them to their suffering and headed to the executive dining room, where Gleason was waiting with a scotch and a knowing smile. You're enjoying this, he observed. Wouldn't you be? He raised his glass in a toast. To new management styles. Claire's productivity has increased 30% since yesterday. Fear is an excellent motivator. Indeed, though I suspect you're just getting started. He was right. By 5 o'clock, I'd received a text from Sophie. Phase 2 is ready. Meet me at the Meridian Hotel bar at 7. The same hotel where Clara and Chad had been conducting their affair. The symmetry was beautiful. The Meridian Hotel's bar was exactly what I'd expected. Dim lighting, leather banquettes, and the kind of atmosphere that encouraged poor decisions. Sophie was already there when I arrived, nursing a martini and watching the entrance like a hawk. He's here every Tuesday, she said without preamble. Same time, same booth in the corner, usually with Jennifer from accounting, but tonight he's flying solo. I followed her gaze to where Chad sat hunched over his phone, probably trying to manage the fallout from his increasingly complicated love life. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the events of the past 24 hours. What's the play? I asked. Sophie's smile was carnivory. Watch and learn. She stood and walked over to Chad's table, her heels clicking on the marble floor. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see Chad's face growing progressively redder as Sophie spoke. She was showing him something on her phone. More photos, more evidence of his indiscretions. Then she did something I didn't expect. She kissed him on the cheek, loud enough for the other patrons to notice, and walked away. Chad sat there frozen, his face a mask of confusion and terror. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Go to the parking garage, level 3. I found her there 15 minutes later. Standing next to Chad's pristine BMW, she was holding a set of keys and wearing latex gloves. Where did you get those? I asked. Lifted them while I was kissing him goodbye. He'll be looking for them for hours. She opened the driver's side door and began systematically destroying the interior. Not vandalism, something more surgical. She removed the expensive floor mats and tossed them in a nearby dumpster. She adjusted the seat and mirrors to impossible positions. She programmed his GPS to route everything through the worst traffic in the city. The beauty of psychological warfare, she explained, working with professional efficiency, is that it's completely legal. He can't prove we did anything, and even if he could, what's the crime? Borrowing his keys? Adjusting his seat? She saved the best for last. From her purse, she produced a small device that looked like a garage door opener. What's that? Car alarm remote. I bought it online for $20. It's programmed to the same frequency as his security system. She pressed the button. Chad's car alarm began shrieking, echoing through the concrete structure like a banshee. Sophie tossed the keys under a nearby car, and we walked calmly toward the elevator. Phase 3? I asked as the doors closed. Tomorrow, but tonight I think you should have a conversation with your wife. Clara was waiting in our living room when I got home, still wearing her work clothes. She'd been crying. Her makeup was streaked, her eyes red and puffy. The partners want to see me tomorrow, she said without looking up. I'm not surprised. They're talking about suspension, maybe termination. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in the chair across from her. Not the couch where we used to watch movies together, but the leather recliner that had always been mine alone. What did you expect, Clara? You've been conducting an affair with a colleague, using company resources, lying to clients about your availability. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? She finally looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Genuine fear. I don't know, she whispered. I was lonely. You were always working, always tired. Chad made me feel young again, important. So you decided to blow up our marriage. I decided to feel alive again. Her voice grew stronger, defensive. Do you know what it's like being married to someone who treats you like a roommate? Someone who comes home covered in sawdust and falls asleep watching ESPN? The words hit like physical blows, but I kept my expression neutral. Is that your justification? It's my explanation. I finished my bourbon and set the glass down carefully on the side table. Here's mine. You had choices, Clara. You could have talked to me. You could have suggested counseling. You could have asked for a divorce. Instead, you chose to lie, cheat, and humiliate both of us. So what happens now? I stood up, straightening my tie. Now you live with the consequences. The next morning brought fresh chaos. Chad's car had been found in the hotel parking garage with all 4 tires slashed. Not by us, but apparently by Jennifer from accounting, who'd discovered his affair with Lisa from the paralegal pool. The security footage showed Jennifer attacking the BMW with a box cutter while screaming obscenities that would make a sailor blush. This is getting out of hand, Mrs. Henderson observed, handing me the incident report. Is it? I was genuinely curious about her perspective. She'd seen 3 decades of office drama. Mr. Morrison, in my experience, when you corner a rat, it either runs or bites. Chad Morrison has nowhere to run. She was right. By 10 a.m., Chad was in my office, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. We need to talk, he said, closing the door behind him. Do we? This has gone far enough. I know you're behind everything that's been happening. I leaned back in my chair, studying him with the same expression I'd used to examine a particularly interesting insect. I'm behind a wellness program and some policy changes. Are you suggesting there's something wrong with promoting employee health? You know what I mean. Actually, I don't. Could you be more specific? His hands were shaking now, whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. The car, the photos, Sophie. Sophie is a valued employee who's demonstrated remarkable initiative and attention to detail. As for your car, I understand you've been having some trouble with vandalism. Have you considered that might be related to your personal conduct? You can't prove anything. Chad, I don't need to prove anything. You've done all the work for me. I opened his personnel file and spread the contents across my desk. Performance reviews, client complaints, expense account irregularities, and now the incident reports from the past week. Let's see. Inappropriate relationships with multiple colleagues, creating a hostile work environment, misuse of company resources, and conduct unbecoming a professional. How am I doing so far? His face had gone gray. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly. I don't need to destroy you, Chad. You're destroying yourself. I'm just documenting the process. And Clara? What about her? Are you going to destroy her too? I closed the file and looked at him directly. Clara made her choices. She can live with the consequences just like you can. He left my office looking like a broken man, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, but a kind of cold professional pride. This was better than any construction project I'd ever managed. I was building something here, creating order from chaos. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Phase 4 tonight. Warehouse District. Come alone. The warehouse district at night was exactly the kind of place where bad decisions came to die. Empty buildings, broken streetlights, and the kind of shadows that swallowed secrets whole. Sophie had chosen the location well, an abandoned office building that had once housed a shipping company. I found her on the 3rd floor, standing in what used to be a conference room. She'd set up a laptop connected to a portable projector, the blue light casting eerie shadows on the water-stained walls. Welcome to the finale, she said, her voice echoing in the empty space. What is this? Justice or revenge? I'm not sure there's a difference anymore. She clicked a button and the wall came alive with images. Security footage from the hotel, time-stamped and dated. Photos from Chad's phone. Email chains between him and Clara discussing their affair in explicit detail. Financial records showing how they'd used company accounts to fund their relationship. How did you get all this? Chad's an idiot and Clara's sloppy. They left digital breadcrumbs everywhere. She clicked to the next slide. But this is the interesting part. The new images showed Chad with other women, not just Jennifer and Lisa, but at least 3 others I didn't recognize. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even vacation photos. He's been running a one-man escort service using the firm's expense accounts, Sophie continued, taking clients' wives to dinner, sleeping with junior associates, basically turning Morrison and Associates into his personal dating app. And you documented all of this? Every sordid detail. The question is, what do we do with it? Before I could answer, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets, moving carefully through the darkness. Sophie tensed, her hand moving to something in her purse. Expecting company? I asked. Not exactly. The footsteps stopped just outside the conference room. Then Clara's voice cut through the silence. I know you're in there. She walked in, flanked by Chad and 2 other men I didn't recognize. Probably private investigators or security guards. Clara looked different. Harder somehow. Like she'd finally stopped pretending to be the sufferer. Hello, darling, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Having fun with your new girlfriend? Sophie's not my girlfriend, she's my business partner. How modern of you. Clara's eyes moved to the projection on the wall, taking in the evidence Sophie had compiled. Impressive presentation, very thorough. Chad stepped forward, trying to look menacing despite his obvious terror. You need to destroy all of this. Tonight. Or what? Sophie asked, her voice steady. Or we destroy you, Clara said simply. Both of you. One of the men with them opened his jacket, revealing a shoulder holster. Not pointing it at us, just making sure we saw it. This is interesting, I said, genuinely fascinated by this turn of events. My cheating wife is threatening me with armed men in an abandoned building at night. You pushed too far, Clara said. Did you really think I'd just roll over and let you ruin my career? I didn't ruin your career, Clara. You did that yourself. No, I made one mistake, one affair. You turned it into a crusade. Sophie laughed, the sound sharp and bitter in the empty room. One affair, Chad, show them slide 17. Chad's face went white. Sophie, don't show them, or I will. With shaking hands, Chad clicked to the next slide. It showed him and Clara together, but not recently. The timestamp was from 2 years ago, long before their supposed reconciliation. 2 years, Sophie said conversationally. They've been conducting this affair for 2 years. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even a weekend in the Bahamas, charged to the firm's client entertainment budget. Clara's composure finally cracked. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Actually, I do. Sophie pulled out her phone and showed us the screen. I've been live streaming this entire conversation to the Morrison and Associates partners group chat. They're all watching right now. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara stared at the phone like it was a snake, while Chad made a sound like a deflating balloon. You're bluffing, Clara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Check your phones. Both Clara and Chad reached for their devices. The color drained from their faces as they saw the notifications. Dozens of messages, missed calls, emails marked urgent. The partners are having an emergency meeting tomorrow morning, Sophie continued, about ethics violations, misuse of company funds, and conduct unbecoming. I believe termination and potential criminal charges are on the table. One of the security guards shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, maybe we should... Shut up, Claire snapped, but her authority was evaporating by the second. I stepped forward close enough to see the fear in my wife's eyes. It's over, Clara. Whatever you thought you could accomplish here tonight, it's over. This isn't over, she said, but the words sounded hollow. Yes, it is. Tomorrow morning, you'll clean out your desk. Chad will do the same. You'll both be lucky if the firm doesn't press charges. And then what? Then you'll start over. Find new jobs, new lives, new identities if necessary. Because everyone in this city will know exactly what you are. Clara raised her hand as if to slap me, but I caught her wrist easily. Construction work had its advantages. I was still stronger than her corporate gym routine had made her. "Don't," I said quietly. "You've humiliated yourself enough for one lifetime." She jerked her hand away, tears streaming down her face. "I hate you." "I know, but you'll get over it." Sophie shut down her presentation and packed up her equipment with professional efficiency. "Gentlemen, I think we're done here." The security guards looked relieved to be leaving. Chad stumbled toward the exit like a sleepwalker. Clara stood there for a moment longer, staring at me with something that might have been regret. "It didn't have to be like this," she said finally. "No," I agreed. "It didn't." The Morrison and Associates Emergency Partners meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. I arrived at 8:30 to find the lobby buzzing with activity, reporters, cameramen, and what appeared to be half the legal community in the city. Sophie's live stream had gone viral overnight, and the story of the cheating lawyers had become front-page news. Mrs. Henderson met me at the elevator with coffee and a grim smile. "The partners want to see you first," she said, "before they deal with the others." The executive conference room was packed with the firm's senior partners, all looking like they'd aged a decade overnight. Gleason sat at the head of the table, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. "Sit down," he said without preamble. "We need to discuss damage control." "What kind of damage are we talking about?" I asked, though I suspected I knew. "The kind that costs us clients, reputation, and potentially our professional licenses," said Margaret Rothschild, the firm's managing partner. "Your wife and Mr. Morrison have created a scandal that's making national news." "My wife and Mr. Morrison created their own scandal," I corrected. "I just documented it." "You orchestrated a public humiliation that's destroyed 2 careers and made our firm a laughingstock," another partner said angrily. "Actually," Sophie's voice came from the doorway, "he saved your firm from a much bigger scandal." She walked in carrying a thick folder and a tablet, looking like she owned the place. "May I?" Gleason nodded, and Sophie activated the room's presentation system. The wall screen filled with financial records, email chains, and legal documents. Over the past 2 years, Chad Morrison and Clara have embezzled approximately $200,000 in client funds. She began, her voice steady and professional. "They've falsified expense reports, billed personal expenses to client accounts, and used company resources for personal gain." The room fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. "Furthermore," Sophie continued, "Chad has been conducting inappropriate relationships with multiple employees, creating a hostile work environment, and exposing the firm to sexual maltreatment lawsuits. 3 women have already contacted employment attorneys." She clicked to the next slide, showing a complex web of financial transactions. They were planning to leave the firm and start their own practice, taking several major clients with them. The affair was just the tip of the iceberg. Gleason leaned forward, studying the documents. "How long have you known about this?" "I've been investigating for months," Sophie replied. "Initially, I was just trying to understand why Chad kept getting promoted despite his poor performance. What I found was systematic fraud and corruption." "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" Margaret asked. "I needed proof, and I needed to make sure they couldn't destroy the evidence or blame someone else." I watched the partners' faces as the implications sank in. Without Sophie's investigation and my unwitting role as the catalyst, Claire and Chad might have succeeded in their theft and defection. "What do you recommend?" Gleason asked. "Immediate termination for both of them," Sophie said. "Full cooperation with law enforcement, and a complete audit of all accounts they had access to. And the media circus outside? We'll die down once the real story comes out. Corporate fraud and embezzlement are more serious than marital infidelity." Margaret nodded slowly. "Ms. Martinez, I think we need to discuss your future with this firm." 20 minutes later, I was back in my office when Clara and Chad were escorted into the building by security. They looked like prisoners being led to execution, which, in a professional sense, they were. My phone rang. It was the receptionist. "Mr. Morrison, your wife is here. She wants to speak with you. Send her up." Clara walked into my office alone, her usual confidence replaced by something I'd never seen before. Defeat. She sat down across from my desk without being invited. Her hands folded in her lap like a schoolchild waiting for punishment. "They're pressing charges," she said quietly. "I'm not surprised. The FBI wants to interview me tomorrow. You should get a lawyer, a good one." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "With what money? They've frozen all my accounts." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 2 years of lies and betrayal settling between us like dust. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "Are you? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" "Both, probably." She looked up at me, her eyes red from crying. "I never meant for it to go this far. But it did. Yes, it did." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. "Divorce papers. I've already signed them." She took the envelope with trembling hands. "What about the house?" "Keep it. I never liked it anyway." "And your job here? What about it? Are you staying?" I looked out the window at the city below, thinking about the question. "For now, someone needs to clean up the mess you and Chad made." She stood up, clutching the divorce papers. "For what it's worth, you were a good husband. Better than I deserved." Yes, I was. After she left, I called Sophie into my office. She looked different, more confident, more authoritative. Success suited her. "The partners offered you Chad's position." I said, "It wasn't a question." "Senior associate with a fast track to partner, plus a substantial raise in my own office. Congratulations." "Thank you." She paused at the door. "What about you? Any regrets?" I thought about the question seriously. 2 weeks ago, I'd been a construction manager married to a woman who was systematically betraying me. Now, I was a corporate executive whose cheating wife was facing federal charges, and I'd helped orchestrate one of the most spectacular professional downfalls in the city's recent memory. "No," I said finally. "No regrets." Sophie smiled. "Good, because I have some ideas about restructuring the corporate litigation department, and I think you're going to like them." After she left, I sat alone in my office, watching the sun set over the city. My phone had been ringing all day. Reporters, old friends, even my mother, who'd somehow heard about the scandal on the national news. I ignored them all. There would be time for explanations later, time for interviews and depositions and all the bureaucratic machinery that follows a scandal of this magnitude. For now, I was content to sit in my leather chair in my corner office in the firm where my wife had once worked and savor the perfect symmetry of it all. Clara had wanted excitement, adventure, a life more interesting than the one we'd built together. Well, she'd gotten it. Federal charges, professional disgrace, and a divorce from the man who'd actually loved her. Chad had wanted to use his family connections and boyish charm to coast through life without consequences. Now he was facing prison time and professional ruin. And me? I'd wanted justice. Or maybe just revenge. I still wasn't sure there was a difference. What I'd gotten was something better. A new life, a new career, and the satisfaction of watching two people who'd betrayed me face the consequences of their own choices. My desk phone rang one last time. The caller ID showed it was Frank from the boxing gym. "You son of a witch," he said when I answered, but he was laughing. "I just saw the news. You actually did it." "Did what?" "Burned it all down and walked away clean." "I'm proud of you, man." "Thanks, Frank." "So what's next?" I looked around my office, the mahogany desk, the leather chairs, the view of the city where I'd been born and raised, and where I'd finally learned to fight back. Next, I think I'll enjoy being the boss. I hung up the phone and walked to the window. 32 floors below, the city hummed with life. People going home from work, heading out for dinner, starting their evening routines. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that sometimes the universe actually delivers justice. Clara and Chad would rebuild eventually. They'd find new jobs, new relationships, new ways to justify their choices. But they'd never forget what it felt like to lose everything because of their own arrogance and stupidity. And I'd never forget what it felt like to win. The cleaning crew was working their way up the building, their vacuum cleaners humming in the distance. Soon they'd reach my floor, and I'd head home to my empty house to figure out what came next. But for now, I was exactly where I belonged, at the top of the building where my wife once worked. in the job she'd never thought I was smart enough to handle, watching the sun set on the most satisfying day of my life. They'd called me the villain in this story. Maybe they were right, but at least I'd never worn a mask.